Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Bryan here, your web design educator at Shaw Academy, and you're all very welcome to lesson 2 of the Ultimate Web Design program, HTML and CSS Extended. So this is the theory lesson. Well, this is actually the theory lesson that I had last night live, except unfortunately the audio did not come out at all, so I don't know what was going on there. So what I'm doing now is I'm re-recording the lesson for you all. So very sorry that the audio didn't come out on the recording last night, but sure, we'll get through these slides and I'll get through the demos and I'll remember as many questions that came up in the lesson as possible. So here we go. So we can skip our sound check. So just to start with a quick recap of what we were covering last week and just the very important information. So the first thing was on file paths. So starting with a / returns to the root directory and starts there. Starting with a .. moves back one directory and starts from there. And then of course you can keep adding those on to just keep moving back directories. But you really wouldn't want to use more than 3 of them. You know, three of these kind of .. is kind of pushing it. You've got a problem with your file structure if you have to use too many of those. All right, and then of course, just to move forward, just like in the introduction course, we can just start with the first subdirectory and keep moving forward there. Now, just be aware that when you're working locally, when you're working on your local machine, when you start with a / and say return to the root directory, sometimes I used to always have this problem myself when I was starting out, that sometimes it would run all the way back to my C drive, or sometimes it would run all the way back to my local server, which was too far back compared to where the root files were. So listen, if your file paths, if an image isn't showing up, just relax. You know, if you can't get it to work, just take a break from it and then come back to it and just take a look at what might be going on. And of course, you've also got the inspect element tool as well. So open up your browser, find the broken image, right click, inspect it, and see what the absolute file path is being declared in the browser. See where it's trying to find the file, and then you should be able to work out what is going wrong with your file path. Alright, now we were also discussing the progression of the web. So if you remember, the very first generation of the web was Web 1.0, and it was named Web 1.0 retrospectively. We didn't come up with this name until after Web 2.0 became popular. So Web 1.0 was the first stage of the web. We had static websites, we had no real interaction, and certainly no user-generated content. So this is back in the days where everybody had dial-up, because there was no other option. Internet infrastructure wasn't fantastic. You know, it was difficult enough to actually load an image on someone's web page. A lot of us, especially here in Ireland, we were browsing while disabling images, simply because the internet was just so slow. Our infrastructure was too slow to handle it. So of course, the idea, if it was difficult enough to get an image off the web, it was just ludicrous to try and upload an image to the web. So that was the first stage of the web, Web 1.0 as it's known. But then we start to have a transition into this thing called Web 2.0. So it was first coined in an article in 1999, but then it was heavily discussed at a tech conference in 2004, and that's when this idea of Web 2.0 really became popular. So there was no actual real technical update to the web. People didn't decide, all right, it's time for us to move into Web 2.0. This is what we're going to do. No, it was actually more of a shift of how people interacted with websites, because it was just a whole bunch of stuff came together to allow this to happen. So internet infrastructure got better. Dial-up even got better. You got faster speeds. You got LAN cables. You had all this other stuff going on, which meant that not only were you able to see images on the web, we were now starting to get videos. We're now able to start seeing videos on the web, and also your upload speed was being increased as well by your ISPs, by your internet server providers. So it meant that websites could ask you for your content. Websites could say, you know, do you have a funny cat picture that you'd like to add to our gallery? Upload it in the section below. And then this started kicking off the social media. The idea that we can interact with each other on the web and upload parts of our lives, upload our media, upload our images, upload our videos, not just chatting in forums anymore. So social media really took hold. And this was the time when Facebook took off. It was during these times that YouTube took off. MySpace and Bebo, they were around because I remember using them in 2002. But really all this kind of stuff took off. So that was Web 2.0, the second generation of the web. And then we move into Web 3.0. So this is the generation we're in now. We are now into what is known as the semantic web. So the semantic web, it's all about connective intelligence, connecting data, concepts, applications, and people together. And the HTML5 language update has actually made the semantic web possible. So because a lot of styling tags were deprecated in HTML4, so we got rid of center a long time ago, we got rid of font face, all that kind of stuff, got rid of them all because HTML was about structuring a document, about describing the structure of a document, nothing about styling. And this has done some wondrous things in web design. Because what this means, and actually I showed you guys a website last night, I'll see if I can get it again, and I'll show you exactly what this kind of thing is allowing us to do. So if I was to go to paperplanes.world. So here is a perfect example of what you can do when the browser, when you start giving consideration. Sorry, I'm getting into this problem again where the audio is blaring in my ears. All right, 2 seconds. I'm just going to turn off my Chrome audio. There we go. Turn that right down. Visit on a desktop and you have all these paper planes flying around, and every so often a little notice will pop up to tell you who's throwing a paper airplane. Because if you visit this site on a mobile, it gives you a different option. It recognizes that you're using a mobile and you're able to make a paper airplane. So there we have it. A plane has just left from Mountain View, USA. So someone in Mountain View, USA has logged onto this website using their phone, they folded a paper airplane, and then they threw it, and then it's going to show up. So if you want to try this yourself, you go on to your mobile app, open up your desktop and throw a paper airplane, and you will see eventually it will pop up in your location. So this is exactly all the stuff that we're talking about, you know, not just displaying something to the user or trying to adapt to their device, but their device actually understanding what it's trying to be, what it's being given, and making full use of all the different devices we have out there. So connecting data, apps, and people at the end of the day. So there we go. So there's a link to that site up there on our Great Students Facebook group. The Facebook group, particularly for you guys. All right. So there we have that. All right. So that's perfect. That's perfect. And just to reiterate, because I had a question on it last night, that these. Just to really hammer home that these are not decided stages, that people didn't wake up one day and go, all right, it's time to, or people won't wake up one day and say, all right, it's time to activate Web 4.0, it's time to activate that plan. No, people, because the web is guided by people, it's guided by the way people use it, because we have W3C, but we have no one who owns the internet in its entirety. If you all remember that, no one owns the internet in its entirety. It's provided to the people of Earth to be used by the people of Earth, and even the license that's attached to it will keep it free. So all the web users out there, depending on how you use the web, will steer it into the future. So that is the way these generations come and go. So Web 1.0, Web 2.0, and we are currently in Web 3.0, the semantic web. All right. So now this lesson is going to be about, well, it's really going to be about CSS. I'm going to give you a much more in-depth knowledge of how the cascading style sheet language actually works. So just to really I just want to quickly recap on the syntax of CSS, so I'm not leaving you behind with some terminology. So if we want to style something in our HTML document, we use CSS. So we start with our selector, and our selector can be any element on the page. So that's heading 1, that's body, that's a div, that's a paragraph. Select any of those. We could also have any class or any ID as well. So any of the class attributes we attach to any element, we can select by those, and IDs as well. But we really shouldn't use IDs for styling because they're meant to be unique. So they're not very good for styling. Right. Then we have our curly brackets, so then we open up our curly brackets, and then we select a property of that, and then we have a property of that selector that we want to change, and then we give that property a new value. All right, so then everything between the curly brackets is known as the declaration block. Yeah, so everything between the curly brackets is known as the declaration block, and then this whole thing here is known as a rule. It's known as a CSS rule, so you actually dictate the rules in this. So if I give you a quick example, here we have the heading 1 is the selector. The property of that selector we want to change is its color, and the new value we're giving that color is red. And then you can see at the top there that that's all the declaration block, and everything you see there is the CSS rule. So that was just to give you a quick recap on the syntax of CSS. All right. So the 6 types of style sheets. The 6 type of style sheets. So sorry, just very quickly, I'm just going to make sure that all the audio is still running out there. Yeah, I can see my bars moving up and down. Just wanted to confirm that before we move any further. That would be an absolute nightmare. All right, so we have 6 types of style sheets. So You might not have been aware that we have 6 types of style sheets, but let me just quickly run through them. So we have the browser style. Yes, so we have the default browser styling. So when you write HTML and you plug it into a browser and you've marked up your headings and your paragraph and you might have made things bold, you might have made things italic, and when you load that into the browser will display them as such. You know, a heading 1 will appear larger and bolder. A paragraph will appear like, you know, like a normal paragraph, how you'd expect a block of text to display. Bold will look bold, italic will look italic. But what is actually causing that? Well, it's the browser style, because the people over at Google, the people over at Microsoft, the people over at Mozilla, they coded in their styles into their browser, and that's how it looks. So that's the first style sheet to go up there. And the real point of this is that because the internet and the web is so important, because over the next few years, you'll see that even kids are going to be learning this, and it's just going to be just as popular as reading and writing. It just has to become a part of it, because you know, you can connect with everyone else on the planet, and you don't need to know CSS, you don't need to know PHP or JavaScript, and you don't even need to know that much of HTML either, because if you want to get a message, if you have a very important message to get out to the world, all you need is just a little bit of a markup language, a little bit of that hypertext markup language, and it will display in the browser properly, and that's all thanks to browser style. But now we are web designers, so we are just as concerned with the design as we are with the information. So we've got a whole bunch of other stuff for us as well. But before we go through those 4 types of style sheets that concern us, we also have to give consideration to the user style. So these are the 2 ones that are kind of sitting in the browser. So you have the browser style that's provided by your browser, Google or Mozilla or Apple or whatever browser you're using. But then we've also got user browser styles. And what this means is that you yourself, as a user of a browser, you can overwrite the browser styles. You can actually add your own styles to the browser. So if you have reading disabilities, or if you're slightly colorblind, you can actually add your own styling to the browser to better handle that. And some of you might have seen that if any of you have been around long enough with my course on my Google homepage. So let me just quickly open this up and show you what I mean. So let me just type ASDF there. So you can see all these links here are purple or blue. Well, I'm going to be honest with you, I can't really see the difference between the purple and the blue. I can't tell at a first glance. I have to look at this for quite a while to see which ones I've clicked on and which ones I hadn't. Now, if you can see full color, well then fantastic, you can see that and that's perfect. But be very aware that up to 5% of men cannot tell the difference between this purple and this blue color that Google use, and it's just the default link styling. So what you can do is you can have your own browser styling. So I've actually got an extension here that I use. It's called StyleBot, and what I do is I open up StyleBot, and it wasn't set up on this computer, but if I was to just select a style here on the page, just use my selector here. So I'll select you, select, and then I will select this here, and I will just edit that link there. Whoops, there we go, that's fine. So AVISITED. So really what I wanted to do was I wanted to create a starker contrast between links and visited links. So this is what would happen, A visited, and then I would change its color to red. So there we go, and that's not red, I want #F00. Make it nice and simple, and that was that. So let's just take a quick look. So now I can see straight away, because the way I browse the web, and a lot of people will be the same, is that we like to speed read. So especially when I'm doing SEO work, I can bump these search results up. So let me just turn on my just show you exactly what I'm talking about here. So let me just never show instant and then bump it up to 100. So when I'm doing SEO research for any of my clients, or just for myself, or just out of interest, I'll have 100 results per page, and I'll be clicking and I'll be opening up things. I'll be sliding down, trying to find certain things that catch my eye, and then I'll click on them. But then when I come back, I want to be able to scroll down and see them straight away. So if you have full color vision, granted you might be able to see that straight away. I'm not. I want to be able to see a starker contrast like that. So this is where user style sheets come into play. Alright, so let me just get back into that presentation there. Alright, so that's the user styling. Then we've got inline styling, and that's applied using the style attribute. So we mightn't have seen much of that, but that's something like when you write a heading 1, when you have, say, a heading 1 on your page, well, then you can attach an attribute. So just the way you can attach a class attribute or an ID attribute, we've got this style attribute as well. And what that is, it's just style equals, and then you just write the CSS directly in line with the HTML elements. We've also got embedded styles, or internal style sheets, as I was calling them on the foundation course. So in the introduction course, this is where we lived. We lived with the embedded styles, with the internal style sheets. And that was incorporating our styles into the HTML document by placing it within the script tags in the head of that HTML document. So internal or embedded styles, that's those. So we have 2 more left. We've got linked style sheets. And they're the ones that we're using on this course. It's the recommended style approach, where we add our style sheets in just have a style sheet, and it's just completely separate, and all that's in there is our CSS styles, and then we link it to our HTML documents using the link tag in the head of the document again. So that's linked style sheets, or external style sheets as they're known as well. And then we've got one more type of style sheets that you've probably never seen before. Sorry, excuse me. One more style sheet that you probably haven't seen before, and that is the imported style sheets. So these are just like linked style sheets, but basically what you do is that you can import styles from another style sheet into your styles. So that's just the 6th type there, and that's really advanced kind of stuff when you're dipping into that when you're dipping into there. If you're downloading any frameworks or anything like that, you might notice that they do have imported styles there, or especially around CodePen, you'll see that people are importing styles from other pens. So there's loads of ways to add style to our site. Alright, so how do all these work? How does the browser decide which one of these to apply when we have 6 types of style sheets and we have a number of ways to apply styles to any given element or section of the page? Well then, how does the browser know which one to apply when we have a conflict? Well, we have the cascading order. We have cascading style sheets. So the cascading order determines how styling rules will be applied. It's a set of rules that determine how our styles will be applied. So this is the cascading order. One that takes precedence over everything else is the user style sheet. So that's the one that I showed you there with the Google example where I made my links red. So the user style sheets will take preference over everything else. So if the user has said that they want all their links to be red and they've written that into their browser, well then no matter what you tell the links to be, they should be red. Yeah? So no matter what you tell the links they should be red. Now that makes perfect sense, because the chances are that when someone is doing that, altering the browser styles, it is due to some sort of disability, through not being able to see a certain color or not being able to read a certain font size or something like that. So you don't want to mess with that, because there's no point you saying, no, well, for the artistic representations I want this link to be blue. What's the point of doing that? Because the user can't see it if you're going to overwrite their style. So the user style sheet comes first. The next one down is inline style sheets. So if you're dictating styles using the style attribute, so if you have heading 1, style equals inverted commas, color red, well then that's going to take precedence over internal and all the other and external style sheets as well. So that's inline styling. Then we have embedded styling, falls next on the cascading order. So embedded styling will be linked and imported and browser styling. And the embedded styling, again, guys, is the styling that's incorporated in the style tags in the head of your document. The next one down is linked or imported style sheets. So you'll notice they're both on the same level. So linked and imported style sheets are on the same platform on the cascading order. So they come in next. And then the last one, the styles that have the least authority are the browser styles. So it's very easy to overwrite the browser styles, because well, that's the way they're written. They're written to be overridden, and so that's the cascading order there. Now there's another rule that we have to apply to this. So what happens if we have 2 linked style sheets? Yeah. So what if I included the Bootstrap library, the Bootstrap framework, which is a style sheet, and then I have my own style sheets? Well, here we go. Oh, sorry, there's a few more clicks here. There we go. So all things being equal, any conflicts will be won by the style sheet applied last. Okay? So if I have the Bootstrap library, and that's telling all my links to be blue. And then I've got my own personal styles that I've been writing into, that I've been marking up the page. Well, I would want to link to my style sheet after I've linked to the Bootstrap one. And I'll show you examples of this after this slideshow. So I would want to link to my style sheet after I've linked to the Bootstrap one, because that way I'm taking the cascading order, because they're both linked style sheets. Bootstrap is a linked style sheet. I've got my own styles which are also externally linked. Doesn't matter where they are on the web, they're both linked style sheets. So we can see here they're on the same level in the cascading order. And then Bootstrap says they want all links to be blue, and I say I want all links to be red. Well, because they're both very equal, they're both valid rules, and neither one of them is better than the other. Well, my rule is going to be applied if I add my style sheet after the Bootstrap one, because any conflicts will be won by the last style sheet applied. All right, so perfect. So that's the cascading order. Now we've also got this other thing in CSS known as inheritance. All right, so inheritance means that styles inherited from their inheritance means that styles are inherited from their parent elements. Now this is very handy in CSS. This is very handy in CSS because if I want to say, because imagine if I wanted to style, if I wanted to have all the font on my web page to have a font family of, say, sans serif, yeah? Actually, wait, there's an example here. So applying a font family of sans serif to the body will mean that all children of the body will have a sans serif font until you declare otherwise. Now that's very handy, because imagine if you wanted to have all the elements on your page, if you just wanted sans serif. But then imagine if you had to say, all right, all heading 1s be sans serif, then all heading 2s, all heading 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s, then all paragraphs, everything wrapped in bold tags, everything wrapped in italics. Imagine how long your rules would get if we didn't have inheritance, because you'd have to dictate the same style over and over for everything. So that's why inheritance is very, very useful to us in CSS, and that's why the nesting of HTML elements is very important. That's why we need to nest them all properly. Again, a website is a box inside a box inside another box, and as long as those boxes sit on top of each other, everything is related. It's either a parent, it's either a child, or it's a sibling. Yeah? So we're able to pass our styles down through the generations. But here's another thing. Now, of course, I can think of a few problems where problems would arise with inheritance, but luckily there are fail-safes in there. So not all styles are inherited. The ones I know that are not inherited are border, margin, and padding. I know for definite that they're not inherited down the line, because that would be horrible. Because say if you wanted to add a border to the whole body of the page, yeah? Yeah, so imagine you wanted to add a border around your whole web page. So you added the border to the body. But if the border was inherited by all body's children, that would mean that every heading 1 would have a border. Every paragraph, every div, every bold tag, every italic, everything that was nested then would have a border. So stuff like border, margin, and padding are not inherited. And that's just to make life easier for us. Okay, so that is inheritance. Now, another thing we have to talk about is specificity. All right, specificity. So here's another part of CSS. So when two conflicts occur within a style sheet, there is an algorithm that actually resolves that conflict. Now, that algorithm will look how specific the rule is. All right, so that's the way we're looking at this, specificity, how specific the rule is. So I'm going to give you a quick example. Take a look at that bit of code there. So what that is a paragraph. It's wrapped in p tags. It's been given a class called myParagraph, and there's just a bit of text inside the paragraph there. So now imagine if I had one style sheet and I had targeted this particular block 3 times. The first time I said I want all paragraphs to be red. I want all paragraphs to have the color red. The next one, I'm targeting the class myParagraph. So I'm saying find any element that has a class of myParagraph and make its color green. But then the third one, I'm saying I want to find all classes of myParagraph that are attached to a paragraph tag and make the color blue. Now, these are all targeting this one element here. Not, like they're all targeting that one element. They're not targeting different elements. They're all these rules here are targeting this particular one right here. Which one is going to be applied? Well, because of specificity, the last one is going to be applied. Now, how do I know this? Well, I know this just simply because it makes sense to me. But there is math involved in this, and I'm going to show you that now in a second. So there is math to work this out, which I personally cannot do. I've never been able to do it, but there will be a link up there on your Facebook page if you do have that kind of mindset and are able to work like that. But for me, this just kind of makes sense. Specificity, be more specific. Because if I take a look at this one here, if I turn it into just my normal English speak, paragraphs, I want them read. Yeah? Not very specific. Paragraphs, I want them read. The next rule here, my paragraph. Dot my paragraph. I'm saying you to not just style any paragraph, not just style anything on the page this way. I'm telling you to look for something called my paragraph. I'm telling you to look for something that was actually named so it could be targeted for styling later. So that's obviously more specific than saying that any old P element should be targeted. And then in the last rule here, not only am I dictating a class, but I'm telling you the element that class has been attached to. So I'm not just saying find any class that's called my paragraph. I'm telling you find a class that's my paragraph that's been attached to a paragraph tag. Yeah, so that's again more specific. So out of these three examples here, the color blue is going to win in specificity. So let us take a look. Very quickly, let's just go into CodePen, C-O-D-E pen. All right, so here we go. So my profile. And what I will do is I will find our super selectors game. So we had great fun with this last night. So S-U-P-E-R, S-U-P-E-R, S-E-L-E-C, S-E-L-E-C-T-O-R-S, super selectors. All right, so specificity, the battle between, what did I say? The battle between selectors for ultimate control over your precious elements. All right. So this is a bit of specificity and the cascading order merged into one. It's kind of like a little game. So basically how this game works, is that you first try to find the rule that is giving this image its background color. Now, because this image is a PNG, I'm able to have a transparent background on the PNG, so I've added a background color to the actual image tag, which is going to shine through the transparency. So we can see quite clearly the background is yellow. So I first have to find the rule that is yellow. Now I've given them all their English color values simply so that you can find them easier. So the first thing I need to do is find the background yellow, and here it is. It is inline styling. You can see it's been attached to the image by using the style attribute. So even though I've said over here, you can see this image has an ID of Batman. It also has a class of Spider-Man, and it's got a style attribute attached to it as well. So you can see that I'm targeting it here using an ID telling its background to be black. I'm targeting that same image tag here with a class saying that its background should be red. Up here, I'm targeting just the general image class saying it should be pink. Here in the inline, I'm saying it should be yellow. And then up here, I'm targeting the image tag again. I'm targeting just the image tag again, but this time it's internal styling. Yeah, so external styling, internal styling, embedded and external, embedded and linked, I should say. All right, so there we have it. So what you do is you first try to guess which style is going to take over next. So knowing what we know about the cascading order and a bit about specificity, which one is going to take over next? So let's have a look. So just take a look there. Which one do you think is going to win next? I'll give you a clue. It's on the screen now. So I'll just bump this up a tiny bit. So which one of these styles is going to be applied when I delete this yellow one? I wonder. So have a quick guess there, and let's see if you're correct. So here we go. So the black background color is taking effect. So the ID class here, so this ID is beating the class, it's beating the general tag, and it's also beating embedded styling as well. So we can see that the ID is next. Now, why would the ID have so much weight? Well, because IDs have to be unique. Remember, the proper way to write IDs using HTML is that an ID should only ever be used once. So now that I've used the ID Batman, I can never call in my HTML document again another ID and give it the ID of background, because ID is an identifier. It has to be unique, and that's why we really try to stay away from them in CSS, because they're not great, because even if you're convinced that you are never going to use this ID again, that an ID is perfect, just use a class. Just use a class, because there's nothing wrong with just using a class once. The difference is that you can only use an ID once, but you can use a class as many times as you want, or you can use it once. So you're future-proofing your designs. It means that later on, if something ever does come up, something you're not even planning does come up, it means you don't have to go back and change your HTML to make sure to change them all to classes. So you're far better off using classes and styling. Anyway, the ID will beat it in the specificity, but we shouldn't be using it that much anyway. So now, guys, now, I'm going to delete this ID. Now which color is going to take over, do you think? Now which color is going to take over? So we've got green, red, and pink left. So we got three colors. We've got embedded styling, we've got the general image tag, and we've got the class that's targeting it as well. So which one do you think is going to win when I delete the ID? Well, hopefully you got your answers in your head. Let's delete and see what happens. It is red. It is red is going to take over because I targeted it using a class, yeah? So I'm saying like the ID is gone. Forget about the ID now. But now I'm targeting using a class. So I'm not just saying any image should be this color. I'm saying that this class, I took the time to attach a class attribute and give it a name. So that's obviously more specific than just using an image tag. So then the background is going to be red. So now here we go. So now the last one is not really about specificity. The last one is going to be more about the cascading order. So let's see if you can remember. I wonder. So I've only got two colors left. I've got pink and green. So due to the cascading order, and even you can actually think about this as specificity as well. That's the way I do think about it. But it's going to be the cascading order that takes over here. I'll explain what I mean by why I think of this as specificity after we just delete this rule here. So, I'm going to delete the red. Have it in your head now. Pink or green? Pink or green? Ready? Here we go. The answer is green. Yeah? So the embedded styling or the internal styling is going to beat the external or the linked styling. Yeah? So the green background here is going to beat the pink one. Now, why do I say that? Now, that's because of the cascading order. But even if we think about it this way, that is more specific. Because my styling has been placed inside this HTML document, it is only going to be applied to this particular block, to this particular document. We're not linking to this anywhere else. I'm placing in the style tags in the head of the document, where we incorporate information about the web page. Yeah? So these styles wouldn't be applied to anywhere else, so I will consider that to be specific. You know, the styles that I put in here are very specific to this. Now, it lost earlier due to our IDs and classes because we're using a general image tag. But anyway, that's the way that's working there. So we can see that our embedded styles are beating our externally linked styles. And then, of course, if I delete my background green, we've only got one color left, and that is going to be the pink. So that is not the least amount of weight. Can anyone guess what happens? So what's going to happen when I delete pink? What's going to take over, I wonder? I'm sure you're all shouting the answers at the screen. But if I delete pink, well, it's going to be white. And why is it white? Because the browser says it's going to be white, yeah? So the browser dictates that it's going to be white. So now that I've deleted, now that I'm not targeting the background, now that I've not given my image a background color, it's going to fall back to the browser styling, which is of course just white for a transparent background. All right, so there we go. So that's how all that works. So I won't save it. And then, of course, if you want to see the hint, you can hover down here and you can read the rules there. Anyway, that's up on our Great Students page for you to take a look at. I'm just going to refresh this page without saving it, so I don't lose all the work that I put into it. So leave. There we go. Just make sure it's all still there, and we're all still there. Perfect. Excellent. All right. So then it was about this point that we went back into CodePen and we created some more stuff as well. So let me just close down some of these windows. There we go. All right, so let me just see what else am I missing here. No, I've got all those. Oh yes, specificity. Ah yes, the map I was going to show you. All right, so guys, if you want to Google specificity and try to find a way that can explain it to you in a way that you can understand, I'm just going to quickly show you a preview, and then there's a link to this on our Facebook page. So basically, any tag has a value. Because I said it's an algorithm, yeah? So this is the way the algorithm works. So each one has different values, yeah? So either it's a style attribute, it's an ID, it's a class, a pseudo-class attribute, or else it's just a general element. And so the more specific and then the least specific, and then you can add in the values, and then you can add them up. So there's an example there of the sample calculation. So so here we go. So here it's always easy to read CSS selectors from right to left. So here it's looking for an anchor it's looking for an anchor that's sitting inside a list item that has a class of active attached to it. And all of that is sitting inside a unordered list that has an IT of nav attached to it. Yeah, and this is how it's all added up. So you can see how that works. I personally was never able to wrap my head around it. I was much slower when trying to do the math, and I spent so long with it that after a while I just, specificity just makes sense to me with the way I write it and the way I translate code into just kind of pseudo English for myself. But listen, if you can do this math, congratulations, and do go with it. Yeah. So if you can do this math, it will supercharge your design. Unfortunately, I cannot. But don't worry. And if you can't do the math, don't worry at all. You can get along just fine without it as well. Tiny bit of experience, and you won't even be thinking about this. It will just start happening naturally. Yeah, so perfect. So there's a link to this one here, and I'll actually stick up another link there as well in case you're a bit more nerdy like some of us. So there's also ones out there for Star Wars. So there's people trying to explain it using Star Wars characters. There's another one trying to explain it using Star Trek, and then everything else as well. So you'll find all these all around the web. Loads of people trying to find the easiest way to explain it, so you can see all the math there. Alright, so I'm going to leave specificity at that, and then I'm going to open up CodePen. And so here it is. And then we're going to take a look at some CSS styling, some more stuff about CSS styling. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to set up a quick HTML document. So we'll start with heading 1, and I'll call this Hello World, HELLOWORLD. There we go. And the next one down is I will create a div. And I will give that div a class, CLASS, of, and I'll give this div a class of, let me see, content. Yep, nice meaningful name, content. Next one down, I'll create a heading 2, and I will give this I'll call this my page. All right, underneath that, I'll create a paragraph, P, and this is a web page. Alright, and then what do I want next? Next down, let me see. So that's my paragraph. There's my div. Let's create another. Ah, yes, that's how I'll do it. I'll put another div in here. And I will call this, and I'll put another heading 2 in here. So sorry if this is looking a bit confusing. Let's see, this, and I'll just call this another actually, just so we can see the difference. ANOTHER, there's our div, and then right underneath those I will stick some, should I stick them in here, or I'll stick them after my closing div, I wonder. I'll stick them after that div there, and then I will stick some anchor tags as well. So A, tab, do it nice quickly, I'll put that as a hash, I'll give this one an ID of that link. And then I will call this link to nowhere. And then I'll just copy this down. Just so we can have more than one link. There we go. And I will call this, I'll actually call this link A and link B. Pretend they're actually going someplace. And then the next one down, we're actually going to have heading 2. So heading 2, there we go. And next part. So outside of the whole flow. So there we go. So now let's take a look at some ways that we can style this. Well, there's a few of these that you haven't seen before. So first one I'm going to introduce you to is the kind of is the global styler. Yeah, so this is the one that we also like to stay away from, and it's the asterisk style. So what this means is that encompasses everything. So that's going to target absolutely everything on the page and ask us to style it. Now, why would we have this? Well, a lot of frameworks would use this to remove all browser default styling. So normally what you see when you see the asterisk is something like this. You'd see asterisk and then see MARGIN, margin 0, padding, padding 0 as well. So that means it's going to find every element on the page. Doesn't matter if it's div, doesn't matter if it's a heading, doesn't matter if it's a paragraph or a bar, whatever default style has been attached to it in relation to margin and padding, it's going to remove it all. Yes, that's what's happening there. Let's see what happens if we were to do font size, FONT, SIZE is equal to 20 pixels. And you'll see that it takes every single element and it makes them 20 pixels as well. Yeah. So what is the problem here? So so a lot of people would wonder, why can't I just use body to target the whole document? Well, I'll show you the difference there. That if I use body to target the whole document, well, because the browser default styling is saying that heading 1 should be something like 2EM, and then a heading 2 should be something like 1.5 or something like that EM. Well, you can see that the font sizes are different. Yeah. So I'm not declaring all the font sizes, but if I was to do body, so now I'm selecting the body and everything then every single child of the body. Yeah, I'm applying the styles all the way down. I'm making sure that everything is inherited. Well, then that's how we can break the inheritance as well. That's how we can. So if you want your margin, if you want your padding, if you want your margins, if you want your borders to be inherited as well. So let's take a quick look at that. BORDER, 1 pixel SOLID, black, BLACK. All right, we can't see that, but you can actually kind of see the border over here. Let me just change that up to 3 pixels. We might be able to see a little bit better. So there we go, and green. Yeah, so you can probably see the border over here on the corner, and there's no margin or padding, so it's pushed right up against the line. But now let's see what happens when I add an asterisk here. Yeah, so border isn't inherited down, but you can see what would happen if border was naturally inherited down. You'd end up with problems like this. If you want to add a border to your body, you'd end up adding a border to every single down if inheritance worked that way. So luckily, inheritance works in our favor there. All right, so that's our global styler, is our asterisk. All right, so let's get rid of that. Perfect. All right, what else? What else do we have? Well, of course, let's just go through the obvious ones again. So so if I want to target any element on the page, well then I can just pick it out by its element name. So heading 1s, divs, whatever I want. So heading 1, color, red. Yeah, and that's going to change my heading 1 here to a red color. And if I want to target any class on the page, well, I start with a dot. So let's target this div here. Yeah, so let's target this div. So I want to target a div, but I don't want to target this one. I just want to target this one. So I'm going to target it by its class name. So dot content, CONTENT, background, BACKGROUND, is going to be green. All right, now you can see that because of inheritance, this div down here is also being given its background color. Yes, you can see it's going all the way down, that all of this has got a background color of green. Now, because of specificity, I could do something like this, .div. If I didn't want that div, I could just say background, BACKGROUND, is going to be white. Yeah, so you can see, so now I'm saying that this whole content thing should be green, and this div down here in particular should be white. So you can see how all that works. Now I can also target things by IDs as well. So let's see, where do I have an ID? So I have an ID here called that link, and that other link, I should say there, OTHER. Sorry, I had 2 IDs saying the same thing straight away, breaking things. So that link can have a color of red. Blue. Is that the color I want? Let's go with light blue so we can see the difference. LIGHT, light blue. So there we have it. So we can see that one of the links is being targeted there. By getting to its ID, we target an ID by putting hash and then the ID name. So there. So don't confuse that hash with this hash over here. That link and that link. Yeah. So hash is just how we target IDs. Now, what else can we do? Well, let me see, what other examples was I giving last night? Well, we could also do stuff like, let's see, how could I do that one? Ooh, yes. So what if I wanted to target, say, my heading 2, yeah? So I'm going to target my heading 2. I'm going to give that a color of green. There we go. So there's my heading 2's the color of green. Now, what if I just want this other green? Yeah. So now, what if I wanted this one up here? Yeah. What if I wanted just this one up here to be red? Okay, so I want just this one up here to be red. So what I could do is I could add a class here to this heading 2. There's a number of things I could do. But what I really want to do is I want to write less code in my HTML. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target that using specificity. So what I'm going to say is that heading 2 is actually a direct child of this div here. Yeah? So that heading 2, there's no other heading 2s there, and that's a direct child of this div here with a class of content. So I could do this. I could say dot content H2. And there you have it. You see that all heading 2s are being colored green, but I'm being more specific here. So I'm saying all heading 2s should be green. That's just it. The general statement, all heading 2s on the page should be green. The next one down, I'm saying though, a heading 2 that sits inside an element that has a class of content, and that's what this one here. This means a direct child. Yes, that doesn't mean grandchild, so it doesn't go all the way down, because you see that this heading 2 here, even though it sits inside this div here, even though it sits inside that box, it also sits inside another box. So that's a grandparent to this heading 2 here, because you can see there's another div right here that this sits inside. So if I was to take away that direct descendant thing, and if I was to just say dot content space heading 2, now that's saying something else. Yeah, so that's another way that we can declare style. So what if I wanted to style all heading 2s that sat inside this thing here? So I wanted to target any heading 2 that sat inside content, which would be anything down here. Yeah, so you can see there that the next part heading 2 there is still retaining its green color, but all of these down, I want everything that sits inside here to be a color of red, which you can see here, because I'm saying all heading 2s that sit inside, that sit on top of some kind of element that has a content class attached to it. But of course, I can then just target that one there by saying I want now a heading 2 that is a direct descendant, so not a grandchild, but a direct descendant of an element with a content class attached to it. And you can see how that's working there. Alright, so I'll give you one more thing on links. So we've also got these ways to target links as well. So I can say all links. I should just put this down here, so I can say all links. So sorry, A is the anchor, so I'm targeting here by using the tag, which is A. So A, I want the color COLOR to be yellow. There we go. And then, so there's my links, yellow, can't really see them anymore, but that's fine. So there's my A is going to be colored yellow, but then we've also got these pseudo classes. So A, so just like how we have hover and focus, we've also can target when something has been visited. So VISITED. Yeah. Color. Color. Running out of colors. Light red. No, there is no light red. There's LIGHDCORAL. All right, so let's just take a look. Yeah, there we go. So perfect. Got the name right. All right, so you can see what's happening there. So when I click on a link, so this is what I did actually in the example earlier with Google. What I wanted to see is the pages that I already visited. So now I can target a link that has been visited. Yeah? So when a link has been visited, well, then I want to attach a color of light coral to let the user know that they visited that link. So that is how that works. Now there's loads of these kind of things. There's loads of these ways to select things in CSS. So I am going to so there's also another document up there, the 30 CSS selectors that you should memorize, because these are only 30 types of CSS selectors that you have an option to use as well. So say for example, like so I told you this here is the direct descendant. Yeah, direct descendant. So it should be a child of content. Well, I can also have stuff like let me see, what else have I got? Something like a sibling. Yeah, so I said that things can be parents and things can be children. We can target children's. We can't really target the parents, but we can target siblings as well. Where's my squiggly line on this mark on this keyboard here? Sorry, I'm used to having a different keyboard now. There is a squiggly line. Let me just find this. It must be an alt. It's normally just there we go, just above my hash, just above the shift key. So this little squiggly wavy line here, that declares a sibling. So let me think, is there an example here where I can have a sibling? So what is a sibling there? P is a sibling to heading 2. So there we go. So but do I have more than one of those? Actually, I can pick my heading 2 there, which is a sibling of P. So I want a P, which is a sibling of heading 2. Is that going to work for me? No, no, not perfectly. Let me think of a quick example here just before I leave you and I give you everything else. I know, sorry, it's because the order of these. So the siblings have to be immediately after. So let me just do it this way around. There we go. Did that work for me? There we go, yeah, so there we have it. So I can see here, so I want you to find a heading 2 that immediately appears after, immediately appears after a P, and they're both on the same level, so they're siblings, yeah, so they're siblings. So you can see what's happening there. So that heading 2 is a sibling of P, it's appearing immediately afterwards, so I want a color of red. All right, so what I will do is I will add that. Oh, sorry, it's already been added. Sorry, it's already been added to your Facebook page there. So you'll be able to see all the links to all those things there, and I'll stick them into the notes for this evening as well. So guys, listen, I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry that the lesson didn't come out properly last night. It was a good, fun lesson, but I'm sure we'll be fine moving forward. And if you are missing out on anything, or if you feel that I've left out anything from this lesson, please do just send me an email to web.design@shawacademy.com. Or if you're catching up again from last night, if you're just rewatching, if there's something that you found that was very interesting last night that I've forgotten about today, forgotten to bring up again today, please just post to the Facebook group there. I'll pick up on it, and then we'll discuss it in our group discussion there on our Facebook page. All right, guys. Well, that is it. So we're finished on time today. Ooh, amazing. So listen, I'm very sorry again, but I'll catch you tomorrow for the practical session. So until then, have a very good morning, a very good afternoon, a very good evening, and a very good night, everybody.